Now, the diverse citizenship, and this will take us into lunch. So as we talk about diverse citizenship, when we have measured that in thriving, what that is about is that students are open to multiple perspectives. So a thriving student who's really getting the most out of their college experience and is vitally engaged in the experience is someone who's able to understand there are multiple ways of viewing things in the world. And they can hold those views in tension. They're at least open to them. Some of our students come in thinking very dualistically. But our hope is that one of the things that will happen in this class is they will be exposed to multiple perspectives. They will learn to take another's perspective. They will learn to see what a different other brings that enriches the learning environment. The other part of diverse citizenship is that they want to make a difference in the world. That is often in the local community, and it's part of this feeling like I can make a difference. We see that diverse citizenship, our students of color tend to come in with higher scores in this area because they've had a lot of boundary crossing. They've been exposed to a lot of different perspectives, more so than some of our white students. So our students of color can, that's a contribution that they may particularly bring to the class. However, we know that for our students of color, they do not have as many pathways to thriving as our majority students do. And some of the research on this, and an article on it is posted in iTunes, is that our ethnic minority students across institutions just do not have as many things that help them thrive. So for a white student, they can be involved in this and this and this and this, and they can have all these different pathways that help them thrive. For our ethnic minority students, you find that they have fewer pathways and they affect them differently. So I want to spend just a moment talking about this. Spirituality is an enormous pathway to thriving for students of color, particularly our African American students. It is twice as important as it is for white students. And by important, I mean as something that helps them thrive when they're in college. It's a source of support. It's a source of cultural connection. It is an anchor, if you will, that many of our white students don't see it that way. And so you have an enormous resource right there in the classroom to think the more you can connect to the different faith perspectives and different expressions of spirituality that your students bring, but to know that that's a hook for helping them thrive. We also know that that sense of community is experienced very differently. So one of the studies one of our doctoral students did with the Council for Christian Colleges and Universities found that for students of color, if they don't feel a sense of community on campus, they do not develop spiritually to the same extent as students who feel the sense of community on campus. So sense of community becomes more important for students who are not in the majority, to think how do they feel a part of something, particularly if that something doesn't look quite like them. We will talk more tomorrow about strategies for inclusive pedagogy that will help deal with this. The campus involvement hurdles are different as well. We did a lot of interviews with APU students, and I particularly remember a commuter student. That's a huge hurdle. So we've said there's hardly any of them in the first year class. But when they are commuting, it means they don't get involved. So one student said to us in the interview process, I know 8 o'clock at night doesn't sound late to you, but when I have to take a bus 45 minutes home to get dinner on the table for my brother and sister, I can't participate in anything at night. Why isn't there anything happening during the day? I have no place to go in between classes. And then she went on to describe, in the biochem department, a faculty member who enabled her to just kind of hang out after lab. And the difference that made in the personal connection she was able to establish with that faculty member, and to feel like, okay, this can kind of be home base. And she said, I realized we were talking about personal things, but I was kind of learning chemistry in the process as well, and it was kind of cool, you know? So to think about For commuter students, that's an enormous hurdle for them. And for APU, many of our commuter students are Latina students who live nearby. And so to think about that, also our students of color tend to work more off campus than our majority students do. And that can be a hurdle to their involvement. If they've got to get to work, then it's not as easy for them to be involved in a lot of the things that are happening. This is why what goes on in class is so crucial. For some of our students, and particularly our students of color and our commuters, it may be their best opportunity that they have to connect. And finally, student-faculty interaction. What we found in our research is that our students of color interact differently with different benefits. So for instance, our African American students, by our, I'm talking about the national data, African American students are more likely to interact with faculty, but are less likely to report that that's a good thing. They describe it as a negative experience. And so to think about, okay, I'm doing all the things, I'm going to meet with my faculty, all the things I'm told to do, and it's not paying off. What's happening? And so a lot of the research is showing that they do not feel validated. So if you've read any of Laura Rendon's work on validation, how important it is to communicate to every single student, but particularly those who are in the minority, who are not part of the majority culture, to say, you deserve to be here. You have a place at this table, you are part of us, I value your contribution. That validating response is really, really crucial as we're dealing with students who are not the majority. With our Latina students, we find that often the expression of personal interest, asking about their family, and I don't want to fall victim to stereotyping and overgeneralizing, but oftentimes we heard in our interviews and we saw in the quantitative data as well, that when they had those personal relationships with faculty, it brought them to life in some really important ways. And so to recognize that it is not a one-size-fits-all way of interacting with students, but it's thinking, what do I need to know about this person? And as I hear their story, how do I make that connection with them? We will again circle around back to that as we talk about inclusive pedagogy tomorrow. Eileen?
All right. So how momentum connects with this then is chapter 2 is called There's a Stranger in My Room. And what we know by this third week of school is that the happy honeymoon is over in the roommate situation. And we also know, even for our commuting students, that kind of positive buzz is beginning to wane out, and they're beginning to ask those kind of questions, like, who is this person I'm living with? And so that's where between week 3 and 6 we begin in the residence halls, things begin to get a little bit more uneasy, people begin to do. So we thought, let's use this period, this developmental period, to try to teach them something that could really help them negotiate not just this roommate conflict, but negotiate the liberal arts. And so that's why we talk a lot in this chapter about perspective taking. Now we know at 18 that, you know, you're here and the world is doing this, okay? It's kind of developmentally part of the process. I mean, it's really interesting. You know, we always talk about the millennials being entitled and generation. When I started in the 80s in this work, it was the me generation and they were entitled, and then the next time it was Dress for Success and they were entitled, and now it's millennial and they're entitled. And I began to say, you know what, it might be something to do with 18, okay? Because quite frankly, I've never been so sure of myself or right about things as I was when I was 18. It's gone downhill from then. I got very unsure of it. But at 18, I was pretty sure of things. So we know developmentally coming in that they're beginning to toy and really contemplate it. But it's interesting because you can teach it in the class, this mental assent about taking another person's perspective, and how do you do this, and how do you begin to move out of your own, centric perspective and begin to understand things. Then they go back to their roommate situation and they never make it happen there. It's like, oh, I need a. So what we're really trying to do is say, is there any way we can connect what's happening over there to what might be happening in your classes and what you're trying to teach? So we cover perspective taking in light of their roommate, but it's very clear that we're asking them, and we tell them at the very end of the chapter, your relationships will go much better if you learn this skill early on. And it is, for me, one of the essential liberal arts skills that we need to teach them. Is how to do this, how to argue and think and reason from another person's perspective. Paul is really going to cover this in his section on critical thinking, and we'll merge this together and give us a lot more ideas. because I think perspective taking will run through a lot of things besides just this chapter. But we do know some things about it, and this is where I want to go back to the conversation earlier, because we know that when they increase in perspective-taking ability, it increases their cooperation, their altruism, and their compassion. And I think that's where it begins to connect with their work environment and moving beyond just, hey, yay me, but yay, I've got to learn how to work in this environment and go forward. And it does. We know that it improves their learning gains, and we know that it improves critical thinking. So to me, it's one of those foundational things that when we begin to teach this and learn, and they learn this, and so we want to be doing it all across the university. I think what's interesting, though, is when you look at, this is last year's entering class, but when you look at how they rate themselves, see from someone else's perspective, blue is major strength, orange is somewhat strong, average, and a major weakness. Over 80% of our students coming in already feel like this is a major strength of theirs. Okay. All right. Now, they do go through openness to having my own views challenged. They're less confident in that area, so they do know there's a little bit of a disconnect between their perspective. But I think what's interesting is you hold that up against, this is where a strength, knowledge of people from different races and cultures, a much smaller degree believe that that's a strength for them. So they take other people's perspective, but they don't have a lot of knowledge of people from different races and cultures. So it doesn't exactly fit. There's probably a fit we don't understand yet, but that's an interesting dynamic that they have. Now, they do feel very good about their interpersonal skills. These are comparison groups, so these are private mid-range selectivity. And our students feel almost, a good percentage, a few percentage points better in their interpersonal skills. So we're confident in our ability to be a relational type of people. But what goes on outside is this link to, okay, now part of taking perspectives, and what we hope helps them to, is being in different and diverse environments. So this is where City Links, which is our program where we do a day of service in the city of Azusa, comes in. This has been a long-held tradition. It works really well for this curriculum right now because we're asking them to think about taking another person's perspective, then we're putting them into the city and asking them. And the way it works is that there are 3 Saturdays because there's not enough service opportunities in Azusa for us to send 1,100 students out in one day. So it divides up in between these 3 Saturdays. You don't have to attend this event. Your alpha group leaders do organize this. They get them there. We take attendance through the Office of Student Action. We coordinate all the things through there. I think it would be a great thing if you did because I think it is a great way to have conversations while you're doing this. And I think that it makes the City Links experience a little bit deeper and more reflective because you're there asking questions and helping them to process and think about it. But again, you're busy people and you didn't exactly sign up for all of this, so it is really up to you. So we do have 3 dates to choose from, and your class will be assigned to a particular day. If you would really like to do this, but one of those dates already conflicts with something that you have, if you could just let Katie know immediately, so when they start dividing these up, we'll make sure that your class doesn't go out on a day that you can't go to. Now, after they are set, there's not going to be a lot of switching at that point. And we have all sorts of systems, and we can tell you a little bit about it as we go forward, but if a student misses, the Office of Student Action has other places that they can get plugged in, so it won't be like a one-time, if you don't make it, you're out. And if you're teaching multiple sections, all your sections will be scheduled on the same day, so you don't have to go to 3 different City Link kind of things. You may be in 3 locations, but it will be on the same Saturday. And the alpha lead will coordinate it. They will work out. Now, what we do need to have happen in your class, though, is in the very first week, the Office of Student Action will be contacting you, and they would like to send a representative from their office to let them know how to sign up for this. And some of them are underage, so we have to have different kind of releases for them that they have to coordinate with their parents. So we have to get it done the first week. And so they only need 10 minutes of your class. But if you wouldn't mind letting them come in for 10 minutes, and they'll be contacting you on exactly what day and that kind of thing. All right?
Yeah, I would just say, in terms of creating community, is what Laurie was talking about. The Apex mentors will also be invited, like related to your section, to the same City Link day. So it could just be a great opportunity for it's one of the few where the Alpha, the Apex, and the faculty could potentially all go. So that's part of the pedagogy in terms of the citizenship and things like that.
Okay, and so just so that you know, this is week 3 is chapter 2. There's a stranger in my room if you would mind putting that in your syllabus. Laurie?
Great. So one of the things that can both build community and an awareness of multiple perspectives and help each student feel that they have a contribution to make is called Jigsaw Learning. You have a handout. It was the third handout that you were given today. Don't sit there and read it, but it's as a resource for you. Jigsaw Learning does a couple of things. It ensures that students are prepared for class, which is the #1 complaint of faculty, is that students don't read the assignment. And often when faculty say that, I say, well, what are you demanding of them when they come to class that they should have read it? In other words, if you never ask them to do anything in class with the reading, then they're pretty smart actually not to read it because you're going to tell them all about it. So what the concept of Jigsaw Learning is, if you have, for instance, groups of 4, you would have either 4 sections of a chapter or 4 different chapters of your text or 4 articles, but the point is that each student in the group has read something different. And they're the only ones in their group who will have read it. And then they come to class to meet with their group. It's not, let me tell you what I read. Don't do that. But it is, I now have an activity that will demand all the perspectives from the readings. And so in order to complete the activity, we need the expertise of each of the 4 people in the group. Now the benefits of this is students know you're the only one in your group who's read the article. Therefore, if you haven't read it, your group is going to suffer. So it gives them some accountability. It demands that they read before coming to class. But it also makes each person the expert. And that levels the playing field so that the smart student or the white student or the privileged student or the high-income student or the fast reader doesn't dominate everything. It takes everyone being an expert. The somewhat difficult part about Jigsaw Learning, though, is for you to come up with the activity. What are they going to actually do in class with those readings? But that's our challenge every day, isn't it? Of what are we going to be doing with the readings? So I wanted to give you a little bit of time around your table to think about a couple of things. First of all, would something like this, would Jigsaw Learning work in your class? Where? Where do you see that perhaps fitting in? Or where, given your course content, do you think this issue of perspective taking, that you could do an exercise or build that into that, particularly 3rd week is where we are now? Or are there any other things that you would want to add to your class activities that would help students become more open to these multiple perspectives and different viewpoints? Okay, so we're going to give you some time to talk with others at your table or to work alone if you'd rather, to think about, is there a way that I could use either the Jigsaw Learning approach or could find other activities, brainstorm with your group about how you could get students. So that you learn from the expertise that is all around you in this room, to use some creative ideas to think, how could this work in my class? I also wanted to tell you that tomorrow you will actually participate in Jigsaw Learning yourself as an exercise that you will be part of. So you'll get firsthand experience of what that's like and can see whether that would work for your class. What are some of the ideas that you generated around your table for how you can help students take on multiple perspectives, learn to appreciate others' perspectives, or specifically to use, if you want to share how you want to come up with Jigsaw Learning, that would be fine too. So what are some things that you heard around your table that would be helpful for all of us to hear? Which table would like to go first?
Okay. I feel like it's kind of lame compared with other people, so I'm going to say it right. But I'm doing like health and wellness stuff, and so because we were thinking you only have 55 minutes,
yes.
You know, and so it has to be kind of a micro little thing. It can't be this big thing. So assigning, let's say, 4 students, one doing cardio, one doing reading something on strength, one on flexibility, one on maybe rest and recovery, or something, nutrition, hydration, something like that, and then having them come together and create like an ideal workout plan.
Okay.
And so, like I said, it's very micro. It's not hugely academic, but it does get them engaging with each other. It does for my class, teach them what they're supposed to be learning.
Right.
We were just discussing though, how do you grade it? Do you grade it? Is there an assessment? Is there?
No. No.
Yeah, you don't
So,
have to,
so
but-
again, what you're thinking about is the things that I'm doing in class are equipping students to demonstrate their mastery of an outcome through the research paper or the oral presentation or the momentum paper, et cetera. Okay? So you don't grade the Jigsaw thing.
Right, that's what
Right,
we were kind of
yeah.
wondering about.
But on the other hand, if you said, no, this is part of how I'm going to, I've got a different assignment in my class and maybe I'm giving some extra participation points and this is part of it, is we ask your group to rate you, your contribution, were you prepared, et cetera. You could do something, is that what you suggested? Yeah, you could have them rate each other just so for feedback purposes. What you do want to always be able to give students is some feedback on how they're doing. And so even the feedback from their group, you did a great job contributing this, or well, we could have used more about the nutrition piece. We felt like we couldn't answer
have
those
them give
questions.
feedback to each other,
Exactly.
not necessarily from
Yeah,
us.
it doesn't always have to come from you. Feedback can come
There you go.
from each other as well. You would want to teach them how to do that in a way that is respectful, respectful and constructive. Yes. Yeah. What about this table? I'm actually going to go around. All right. Best idea. Watch out. I'm walking around. What was your best idea?
I don't even know if we had an idea. We were just thinking ways that we can adapt
Yeah.
this in our courses, and that we would need to think about that, considering the time that we have and the specific content that we're covering.
Okay. So you need more time to think about
We
it.
do.
All right. Okay. All right. Need more time to process. Any ideas that came up here about helping students take perspective?
Might be a good one about the in-class activity.
Yeah, I'm still trying to think through how this might apply in this case, but I do something in a senior seminar course where we take the first part of the course and we do what I call Wikipedia groups, where we take a specific topic and then they accumulate knowledge surrounding the topic that's usually very concrete and very specific, but then as the conversation about it unfolds, they rather than me being the person who says this happened, then this happened, then this happened, they're sort of the subject matter experts for those things. And so they may not know ahead of time how their piece of information fits into the overall thing that we're talking about. So two recent things were the controversy with like Amanda Palmer generating a bunch of income and then not paying musicians and going on tour. And they'll come into it loaded with ideas and opinions about it already, but by doing the objective research first, it prepares them to be part of the conversation in a more informed kind of way.
Okay, good, good. And so as they then perhaps even read things that are different perspectives, and then, okay, so what do we do with this? This source says this, but this source
So,
says something else.
yeah, so it'll be like an organizing idea, and then there'll be 3 or 4 circumstances surrounding it, and then there'll be concrete questions that the group, so one group might have 4 people addressing 4 different questions around one scenario, and then all the scenarios feed into the main
Okay.
idea.
Okay, good, good.
Sorry, after you
Yeah.
said Wikipedia, all I heard was blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. But Brian, it's great to have you always questioning, where is the text on my phone? Yeah, okay. What about this table? Any,
Well, I'll say
Yeah.
what I said, which was there's a film that shows a violent act from lots of perspectives. You watch all the imagery and you realize how difficult it is to really know what happened.
yeah,
And then maybe have the students write a personal story about something that happened to them that's significant, but from someone else's perspective.
yes, yeah. So it's a great example, where they can see, there's, depending on your character in the story, you saw that differently, yeah, yeah. And if someone saw your story, how would their perspective on it be different? Yeah.
Saying that just because the readings for this course are going to be probably lighter than some of the other academic courses to really look at how students can use their phones creatively for perspective taking or watch videos or music or stories, so but we don't have to get hung up on the reading part.
Okay, all right. Other ideas?
It's about personal, being able to utilize personal narrative in some way, where you have something that holds everyone accountable as opposed to, reading something else, but something that's within them. And Sarah had said, some way stitching that together but then also utilizing in a way that you can compare it across groups, that you can figure out what the gaps are, you can have, so you can use that within the context of the classroom, but they take ownership rather than having them to read a specific part of something, which is also valuable, but also they take the piece of themselves as in response to some
Good.
kind of topic.
Okay, okay. So it's weaving those narratives together, kind of a quilt that you're putting together, and then your role as the instructor would be to see where there's gaps.
Yeah, one of the things we talked about was overcoming the idea that students come in with, that certain students are good at this and they're not. And also that alternative or divergent viewpoints are the wrong ones.
Right.
So especially in GE classes where they don't say share a major or something, we want to find ways to integrate those perspectives.
She just had a wonderful metaphor. There's the Hermione from Harry Potter that's going to take over, and then there's the Ron Weasley who might sit back or what, who's going to sit back. So how can we involve everyone without, someone just kind of taking over?
Right, exactly. One of the resources that you have, and we'll talk a little bit more about it, on team-based learning, there's a really good article that's posted in iTunes U about how you can create teams, teach students how to navigate teamwork together, how you can grade it, so that can give you some ideas as well. What did you all talk about?
Where that took us.
Yeah, we went on a tangent.
You went on a journey.
Yeah, we did. I wonder how that happened. Now, basically just addressing like the different viewpoints, wasn't, I guess, Jigsaw learning specifically, but I used the concept of the journey of the individual, the journey of others, and then the journey of the group. And kind of walking them through that way. So starting off with how we did at the beginning, just their own story, kind of who they are. There's obviously the ethnicity component, there's socioeconomics, there's faith traditions, those types of things. Stories of others, like how we are going to do the like City Links, of serving others and kind of thinking outside of ourselves. And then the learning that happens through that, you can then kind of working through how the group is going to change, how the class itself and how they interact, where you had the research earlier with the students that they're open to new ideas, but they're painfully ignorant. They have no idea really what they don't know.
Right.
And so, so we kind of wrestled around that a lot. How do you just incorporate those things through the class? But just kind of those three journeys and tying them together.
Okay. So weaving those journeys in can be very powerful, as I understand that my journey is valued by others, but also the importance of me valuing what journeys other people are going through and how that makes our collective journey then very, very different. So as we think about some of these things, I wanted to go back a little bit to our diverse students. We'll have more time to talk about this tomorrow, but and there is an article that is posted in iTunes U about, if you want to know the research on this, it's different pathways to thriving among students of color. And so it outlines what we saw as the strengths, the pathways that really help. We had, and this is based on large quantitative data. So remember, when you are looking at 30,000 students, you can make some generalizations. When you are looking at a human being, you don't do that. You don't do that. You don't say, oh, you're this, that, or the other. I know exactly how you're going to respond. I know exactly what I need to do with you. No, I need to enter into a conversation with you. And so it's like all of the quantitative data can give you some hints, but just remember, when you're talking one-on-one with a student, you're trying to get to know that person as an individual. And so we always try to hold that in tension.
I guess you're talking about the value of qualitative research. Over quantitative.
It's this beautiful synergy that we see between quantitative and qualitative.
Okay.
It's just a never-ending feedback loop,
Okay.
right? So we are going to head into lunch.